What do Beyonce and Abigail Adams have in common? A lot more than you might think. Both were not afraid to fight for their own place in history and for the advancement of their fellow women. Separated by generations, but united by a common goal, these two women and many, many others throughout U.S. history did the work of what historian Elizabeth Cobb refers to in her latest book as feminist patriots. Elizabeth joins me now. Thank you so much, Elizabeth Cobbs. I appreciate it. I love this conversation, especially as you frame these women, Abigail Adams and Beyonce, and through this feminist perspective, but also the way that they affect change throughout history.
Well, thank you. Yeah, they really are a part of a wonderful story. I mean, this is one of our best stories as a country, the story of feminism, which was born really in Boston, born in the American Revolution. And from Abigail Adams to Beyonce, women and men have really advanced that history.
So talk to me about when you were putting together this book and you were thinking about selecting the women and then also framing the conversation or the argument in the book. Talk to me about that process.
Well, there were kind of two phases of it, Crystal. I wanted, first of all, I mean, partly for myself. I mean, like that's where scholars start. We're trying to figure it out ourselves. And I wanted to visualize, if you will, the rungs on the ladder that, the first step that women put their feet on, and the next step, and the next step that got us to where you and I can have this conversation, because women were not allowed to speak in public. They were not allowed to keep their own wages if they earned them. They were not allowed to own property, all kinds of things. And so each chapter tells the story of kind of that progression. Like it starts with the right to learn. Now that sounds so basic, but ask Malala in Pakistan, who was shot in the head for wanting to go to high school. And that's all that Abigail Adams was advocating for, at least, well, she was a very ambitious woman, but that was her first real demand, let girls go to school. And so each generation tells that story, but I tell it each time through two people, because I think that we remember stories because of people, right? It's lives and the struggles and the obstacles and the heroism and the successes and the tragedies that everybody confronts that really move our hearts. So each chapter has two in it. And one of them is the person I call like the face of feminism. And she's the civic-minded person who says, things need to be better. And then there's another person who's the why we should all care, why anybody cared, because these were not trivial issues.
Talk to me about including someone like Beyonce in this conversation, because I imagine as a historian, you had a plethora of women to choose from. And what I mean by plethora is like historical figures to choose from, but including Beyonce. What was your thought process in that?
Well, my gosh, just looking at the pictures you've got up, I'm already thinking she's such an amazing person. I was very interested. I think that where we come today, I mean, we have the right to vote, we have equality in law. So how does feminism advance this notion that nowadays, by the way, 91% of Americans say that equality between men and women is very important. So how do we get to the point where it's almost in the water, that it's in the air, and that even if people are still shy to call themselves feminists, and I hope my book will change their minds, that they still believe in the values. And Beyonce is a really important part of that story. Starts out as a girl, 9 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, and she's working on writing music. And the music she's writing from the very first songs she writes are about women's independence, about the importance of being your own person, standing on your own feet. As she said in one interview, of making sure you have a life before you become a wife. And so she's just this person who really embodies the spread of feminist values in all different sizes and shapes and genres. And she's a woman who, wears tiny, skimpy skirts. That's feminism. That's her choice. That's her right. And to be treated with respect and equal respect and dignity, however she chooses to live her life.
When you break down feminism through the generations, through the years, do you find that there are phases of what that looks like? I'm thinking of, in my limited knowledge, the suffrage movement, and how, each sort of head of that movement changed and moved the needle forward as times changed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think we all have this idea of like, well, there was the vote, and then there was sort of a lot of noisy people during the 60s and 70s, and here we are. But it is really a generational battle. So after the right to learn came the right to speak in public. And that was advanced by women abolitionists, actually. And that's what that was the subject they wanted to speak on. And they wanted also, especially, to be able to speak about the particularly hard and heavy burden that slavery imposed on women, on women's bodies, to bear the next generation of enslaved people. That was the way the system worked. So these women wanted to speak about that. And that right to speak was something they fought very hard for. People like Angelina Grimke and Sarah Grimke, who spoke throughout the Northeast. Harriet Jacobs, who wrote a book about it, had been enslaved and wrote about her experiences as a woman. Now, that was considered scandalous, A, for women to get up in public, but B, to write about the things that affected women in particular was considered, well, just gauche. And these women were very brave in doing that. So each generation does exactly what you're saying. And then it's like the right to petition and the right to vote and the right to earn money, the right to equal treatment, the right to safety, which is actually where I conclude, which is something we really still don't have.
I think about, all of these women and how much work and how much they've sacrificed for women to be where they are. This is, Women's History Month. We just had International Women's Day, Equal Pay Day, conversations like this. And I think about, should we have gone farther? I had a recent conversation with someone about how, it was the 1970s when women were able to have their own credit cards. And a lot of people don't realize that was the truth, that was a reality. Do you think that a lot of people think that women have actually come farther than we have?
Since the days of John Adams, anti-feminists, and John Adams could categorize as one, because when his wife said, please write the laws so that we will no longer be the vassals, basically meaning the serfs, the slaves of your sex. And he said, I cannot but laugh. And what he also said is that women really already have sufficient number of rights. Now, this was in an era when, as a woman, if you had children, they belonged literally to your husband. You had no custody over your own children. So that always seemed enough. And so each generation has pushed the needle marker ahead. And often it's been the case that other people in that same generation will say, oh, no, women have got it good enough. In fact, one of the women I feature as a feminist is Phyllis Schlafly, who's a well-known anti-feminist. Because like a lot of people in her generation, she said, oh, well, the Equal Pay Act of 1963, that's okay. And the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that's okay. And even Ruth Bader Ginsburg's lawsuits that made it possible for women to do such things as read a contract under law, sex discrimination lawsuits. Anti-feminists like Phyllis Schlafly, who helped to put a knife in the heart of the Equal Rights Amendment, said, oh, that's all okay. But please don't let the clock tick forward.
What lessons do you think that modern day feminists can learn from the women in your book and the other women you've written about? I think your Harriet Tubman book is one of my favorites as well.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I write novels too, and there's just nothing more thrilling than kind of walking in the footsteps of a person like her, who's such a hero for us all, for all Americans. Well, I think a lesson I'd like to try people to take away is that feminism was a part of the most elemental aspects of American history. Women's history is not like a side dish. It's not like something put on the plate to dress it up and make it look fancy. It's rather, we can't understand things like the Industrial Revolution. We can't understand the abolition of slavery. We can't understand the New Deal and the creation of systems like Social Security unless we understand the ways that feminists were very much a part of all of those major transformations of our economy, our political systems, of our society. So, say it loud, say it proud. I'm a feminist because all of us really do believe that equality between men and women is terribly important.
And I do want to read this excerpt before we let you go from Fearless Women. Quote, the ideas of feminism are at first articulated where in the United States and by women who were personally involved in the American Revolution. It's not a coincidence that these ideas come from the idea that a man, one man, should not stand for all of us, whether he's king or whether he's husband, that all humans, rather, because we have reason, have a right to equality, to life, to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think that sums up so much of the idea of feminism then, but also now.
It does. And actually, feminism, it's a newish word. I mean, words get reinvented. For example, at the time of abolition, Susan B. Anthony used a term like color phobia to refer to what we today call racism. In the same way that Frederick Douglass called himself a woman's rights man, which is like 3 words. And feminist is just a word that's come to us since the early 20th century that people like Eleanor Roosevelt fought for, that Betty Ford, wife of President Ford, fought for. And so it's really been a bipartisan, nonpartisan American tradition from the start.
Absolutely. Elizabeth Cobbs, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. The book is Fearless Women, Abigail Adams to Beyonce. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The book again is Fearless Women, Feminist Patriots from Abigail Adams to Beyonce.